When Dami walked into Sterling and Miles that morning, the polished floors didn't reflect her image back, only the tinted overhead lights. Maybe that was poetic. She'd spent 5 years walking those halls, yet somehow remained invisible to many of the people who shared the space. Not because she was quiet. Not because she lacked presence. But because she was her, black, female, Nigerian American, and according to the eyes that barely met hers, not the type to sit at any table that mattered. She adjusted the strap of her leather satchel on her shoulder, careful not to let the weight of it betray the confidence she rehearsed every day in the mirror. Confidence, after all, was armor here. "Morning, Dami," said Sarah at the front desk, eyes scanning her phone more than Dami's face. The greeting was robotic, not warm, the same tone Sarah used for food deliveries. Dami smiled anyway. "Morning, Sarah." She didn't expect warmth. That wasn't what she came here for. The elevator dinged, a sound she'd grown to both dread and welcome. It was her daily portal between two worlds, the one she was building for herself, and the one people thought she belonged to. As the elevator doors opened on the 19th floor, the air changed. Subtle, but sharp, like when you're being watched even when no one's looking. "Hey, look who's early again. Overachieving as usual." The voice came from behind her, Michael Sterling, the son of one of the firm's founding partners. Tall, clean-cut, and wrapped in the kind of casual arrogance that comes from never having to struggle for credibility. Dami turned slowly, keeping her expression neutral. "Good morning, Michael." Michael's smirk widened. "I'm just saying, you're really setting the bar. Some of us like to sleep in, you know." He was never overt. Never loud. Just enough innuendo to let her know where he thought she stood. Beneath him. Beneath them. She wondered if he even realized how much venom was packed in his passive jabs, or if he thought he was being charming. As she settled into her desk in the project development wing, Dami booted up her system and took a deep breath. She had a presentation today, her first pitch to a Fortune 500 client as lead consultant. It had taken her years to get here. Years of triple-checking her work, dressing twice as formally, and speaking twice as carefully just to be taken half as seriously. And Michael? He had presented twice already this year. His numbers were subpar, but his smile was award-worthy. Across the room, he dropped into his chair with a lazy grace, spinning it slightly before calling out, "You ready for the big leagues today, Dami?" There it was. The sarcasm. The disbelief that she had earned her moment. She met his gaze across the floor. More than ready. The boardroom at Sterling and Miles was designed to impress. Long mahogany table, wall-length windows with a view of the Manhattan skyline, and a projector screen that dropped from the ceiling like something out of a spy movie. Everything said power. Dami stood at the far end of the table, presentation remote in one hand, her laptop open and ready. The client, Wexler Tech's VP of Global Logistics, was already seated. A tall, stern-looking woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a reputation for not suffering fools. But Dami was ready. She had the data, the insights, the solutions. This was her moment. Then Michael walked in. "Sorry I'm late," he said, not looking sorry at all. "I thought I'd co-present with Dami today. We've both worked on this account." She hadn't been informed of this. They hadn't collaborated. This was a hijack. Dami looked to her manager, Tom Weller, seated at the head of the table. He blinked, smiled tightly, and nodded. "That's fine. Let's see what both of you have to say." And just like that, her solo pitch turned into a duet, with a tone-deaf partner. Michael took over most of the slides. He interrupted her twice. Re-explained points she had already made, but in a louder voice. The client's gaze flicked between them, unreadable. Dami held her ground. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was calm, strong, precise. She focused on the data, on the solution, on the value. When the meeting ended, the client shook her hand first. Firmly. "That was well done. Your insights on the logistical delays in the Singapore branch were especially useful. I'd like to discuss that further, maybe over lunch." Michael's face twitched. Dami smiled. "I'd be honored." Dami sat in the bathroom stall long after the meeting ended, the sharp echo of her heels on marble replaced by silence. Her hands were folded in her lap, still. She wasn't crying. She never let herself cry at work. Not here. But the tears were close, like water behind a glass wall. The client had chosen her, validated her. But why didn't it feel like a win? Because Michael tried to steal it. And because he almost did. She'd felt it in the way Tom looked uncomfortable but didn't stop him. In how everyone sat back and let the usual dynamic play out. The white man leading, the black woman following, regardless of merit. It had been hers. Her project. Her presentation. Her strategy. Her hours of lost sleep, sacrificed weekends, cancelled dates, everything. And still, she had to fight for every inch of space. She let out a slow breath, staring at the dull grey of the stall door. "Don't let them see you break," she whispered to herself. "Not today." She thought of her mother. "You have to be twice as good for half the credit," her mother used to say while straightening her Sunday dress before church. But that's not a reason to be bitter. It's a reason to be better. Dami had lived by that mantra. But it was getting heavy. Too heavy. Back at her desk, Michael leaned on the divider, grinning like a frat boy who'd won a beer pong game. "You killed it in there," he said. "I mean, I probably softened her up for you, but yeah, solid finish." Dami turned to look at him, slow, deliberate. She wanted to say, "You stole my spotlight. You embarrassed me. You made me small in front of a client I earned with sweat and skill." But she didn't. Instead, she smiled tightly. "Thanks, Michael. Next time, let me know when you plan on co-presenting. I like surprises, but only when they're chocolate or diamonds." He chuckled, missing the blade in her tone entirely. Tom passed by, barely glancing her way. "No great job. No well done. Just business as usual." Her inbox dinged. One new message. From Wexler Tech, VP Office. Subject, follow-up lunch. "Hi Dami, I'd love to continue our conversation. Are you free next Thursday? Let's dig deeper into your Singapore insights. You've got a sharp mind, I appreciate that." Dami read the message 3 times. Then again. "You've got a sharp mind." She didn't realize how hungry she was for words like that until she had them. And just like that, something in her spine straightened. She wasn't broken. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't crazy. She was valid. And she was about to make that known. Later that night, Dami sat on the edge of her bed, apartment lights low, a glass of red wine untouched beside her. Her laptop was open on the cover of her duvet, glowing with the outline of a business plan she'd started a year ago. It was called Oasis Insight Group. A consultancy firm she'd dreamed of building one day, when the time was right, when she was no longer tolerating men like Michael or waiting for crumbs of respect. She opened the document. Updated a few numbers. Typed a few new lines. Her heart thudded. Fast. Hopeful. The girl who used to practice speeches in her bathroom mirror was still here. But now she didn't just want a seat at the table. She wanted to own the room. By the time Dami met with Wexler Tech for lunch, she was no longer just the consultant with good ideas. She was the strategist with vision. The woman who had predicted the logistics delay in Singapore down to the week, while Michael had dismissed the red flags as market noise. "Your instincts are rare," the VP said over roasted salmon and mineral water in a minimalist uptown restaurant. "Do you know how many people in your position would have stayed quiet while someone else tried to take credit? You didn't. You kept your ground." Dami forced a smile. It was a compliment, but also a reminder. Most people expected her to fold. To disappear. That she hadn't was somehow exceptional. The VP leaned in. "I'd like to propose something. Wexler is assembling an internal consulting task force. It's still hush-hush. But we need someone to lead the East Coast arm. Someone smart. Disciplined. With edge. Your name came up." Dami's breath caught for half a second. Not because she was shocked by the opportunity, but because she had started to believe it might never come. "You're offering me a job?" she asked, cautiously. "No," the VP said with a smirk. "I'm offering you a title. What you do with it is up to you." The resignation hit Sterling and Miles like a thunderclap. Tom called her into his office within the hour of receiving her formal letter. His eyes didn't mask his panic. "Dami, come on. We're just getting started here. You've got momentum. You've got a place on the Singapore expansion team." She sat across from him, composed. "A place I had to fight for. A place that came after Michael presented my work twice and no one stepped in." Tom sighed. Look, Michael, he's got his own way. But he respects you. We all do. No, she said quietly, you respect results. Not me. And that's fine. But I've outgrown this place. When she stood to leave, he didn't stop her. He just watched, like a man realizing too late that the foundation had been hollow all along. 6 months later, Dami sat behind a new desk with her name etched in glass. Dami A. Tay, Regional Director, East Coast Strategy, Wexler Tech. She had an assistant, a corner office, and a team of 8, 3 of whom she personally recruited after recognizing the same fire in their eyes that she once carried. Young black professionals with sharp ideas and quiet courage. Her first day felt surreal. But she didn't float. She was grounded. Still carrying the echoes of the floor 19 hallway, the clipped greetings, the condescension. It made her better, sharper, wiser. And then, as if on cue, Karma entered wearing a suit. Michael showed up as part of a pitch team from a third-party vendor. His firm had been acquired by a larger corporation, and he'd been demoted after a poor leadership review. Rumor had it, he clashed with clients, delegated too much, failed to innovate. Now, he was the presenter, and Dami was the client. She kept her face neutral as he walked in. But inside, something quiet and fierce hummed. He blinked when he saw her. Dami? Miss Tay, she said, smiling politely. Please, have a seat. He stumbled through his pitch. Over-explained slides. Used buzzwords like life rafts. He didn't look up until the very end. So, he said, I hope this meets your vision. Dami tilted her head. Some of it does. But I'll be honest, some of it feels like a copy of a campaign I designed 3 years ago. Michael flushed. Her team snickered softly. She let the silence stretch. You know, she continued, her tone calm, almost gentle. I used to think the problem was me. That I wasn't loud enough or confident enough. But I've realized now, it was never about volume. It was about value. He nodded stiffly. Right. Of course. I'll have my team review and get back to you, she said. Thank you for your time. He left without meeting her eyes again. That night, Dami stood in her office as the skyline lit up beyond the windows. She looked at her reflection in the glass, stronger now, clearer, solid. She remembered every ignored idea, every stolen credit, every coffee break where no one saved her a seat. And then she remembered every late night, every victory no one clapped for, every mentor who whispered, don't stop now. She didn't just survive. She transformed. And now, when they looked up, they'd see her at the top. It had been 4 years. Dami's name was now printed in industry magazines. Forbes had listed her among the top 50 women reshaping corporate strategy. She was no longer just in rooms of power, she built them. But that wasn't what fulfilled her. No, the most meaningful part came on a rainy Thursday morning, when a young intern knocked softly on her office door. Miss Tay, the girl asked, barely above a whisper. She was black, nervous, smart, probably 21. Can I ask you something? Dami turned from the window and smiled. Of course. The girl stepped inside. How did you not give up? Dami's eyes softened. She motioned to the chair across from her. I did give up, she said honestly. Dozens of times. In the break room. In my car. In my prayers. I gave up over and over again. The girl looked confused. But, how are you here, then? Because I kept showing up, Dami replied. Even when they didn't see me. Even when they saw me and chose to look away. Because I realized their ignorance wasn't my burden to carry. My presence was my protest. My excellence, my voice, my boundaries, those were my weapons. The intern nodded slowly, eyes wide. Thank you. As the girl left, Dami turned back to her window. The rain was lighter now, falling gently. And in that quiet moment, she felt it, not just pride, but peace. She hadn't just survived racism. She had rewritten its ending. Excellence is a form of resistance. And so is choosing joy, confidence, and rest in a world that expects your struggle. Your value isn't tied to who notices it. Sometimes, your biggest transformation happens when no one's clapping. If you enjoy this story, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, Stay curious, who knows what story we will uncover next.